Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 232. And today, what I wanted to talk about is I posted something to my Instagram reel page yesterday, and I was talking about how it's important to go after what you want. Like, don't be one of them people that talk about what they want. Just go out there and do it, right? And it's true. Either you're gonna do it or you're not. You know, and in that reel, I was talking about me, myself, being a competitive bodybuilder because I don't care if you're amateur, national level, or even a pro. Like, once you compete, like, it never really leaves you, you know? And everybody talks about doing the show. Everybody talks about how I want to do a bodybuilding show, this and this and that. But few do it, you know? Very few accomplish that goal of stepping on stage. Now, I'm not saying that, that it's easy, because it's not. Bodybuilding is one of them things that you literally have to live it 24/7. But the one thing it teaches you is discipline, and self-belief. And it's different than working out, you know? It's different than lifestyle, you know? Cup of coffee, yeah. Lifestyle and bodybuilding is two different things, right? And I say that because it's true. And there's nothing wrong with either or, you know. Bodybuilding when you strip it all down, it's literally you're building up your body. Like, you're breaking down your body to build it up, right? And like, that's the most confident booster you can ever have, you know. And I talked about in that reel, it's like, I talked about belief and everything too, and I said, like, look, it's important for you to believe in yourself. It's important, not to look for validation from other people, because while validation is cool, it's fleeting, you know. If you want people to believe in you, do what you say you're going to do, you know. Like, when I said in that video, like, I've done 3, 4, 5 shows plus a national show, and I know people who are still talking about, well, I want to compete, this and this and that, and it's literally almost been a decade. My first show that I did, it was 2018. I actually started in 2017. It took me a whole year to lose all this body fat, you know, because I was in the gym all the time, but I had no idea what nutrition was. I had no idea how to draft up a diet plan. I had no idea that X, Y, and Z, you know. I literally just ate like every other college or high school and college kid. It's like, I ate what was available. I ate what was cheap, you know, and what was cheap was shit fast food, you know. What was cheap was everything that was not nutritious at all. And I think that's important, man, to understand that, like, in order to get things you never had, you have to do things that you never done. And as I progressed in this sport, and believe me, it's a beautiful sport. The only gripe I have with it is, like, it gets literally emotionally and physically draining. Physically, emotionally, and mentally draining. And those who've competed, I don't care if you just done a local show or if you've done national shows like I have. It's like, it's extremely, extremely grueling. It's not something that you can just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. Like, no, it don't work that way. And number two, food is fucking expensive. Food is fucking expensive. I mean, yes, food is expensive in general, but imagine you being on the contest prep where you're eating the same thing 3, 4, 5 times a day. Yeah. And that's the one thing with bodybuilding, man. It's like it pushes you to that level. It pushes you, and it's like if you're not built for it, it's going to show up. I was talking to somebody else in the sport, that I respect, and they was saying essentially that a lot of people will pick coaches or they're friends with coaches, and they think, oh, because so and so is my friend, they're gonna they're not gonna hold me accountable, or they're not gonna do X, Y, and Z. See, that's where people fuck up at, man. And me and this individual had a conversation. I said, you never want to pick somebody as your coach who you're friends with. I'm not saying don't do research. I'm not saying don't do X, Y, and Z, because you shouldn't, And I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't go to one coach for everything. Like you should have a posing coach, a conditioning coach, and a diet coach, and a training coach, or have at least 2 coaches, one that can do your posing and your diet plan, and the other one to do your training. Because a lot of the times people will sit there and pick coaches, and it's like they don't know how to pose correctly. They don't write out a diet plan that is tailored to you. And that's not just coaches, that's just trainers overall too. Like I've seen trainers who work for corporations literally print out shit online as a diet plan and give it to their clients. And I'm like, you at least have a certification in obviously kinesiology and or nutrition or dietitian, right? You at least have that, and or you have a degree in kinesiology. If all that took is me printing out, is you printing out a diet plan online that's not even tailored to my body, I could have did that myself. And honestly, it's like a lot of these personal trainers, they ain't shit. I've seen personal trainers who need personal trainers, and then they want to sit there and complain about how come nobody's buying sessions from me. And I'm like, bro, did you look at yourself? You don't even play the part. You don't even play the part correctly. Like, why would somebody sit there and take workout advice or take nutrition advice from somebody who does neither? Like, why would they sit there and take nutrition advice from somebody who eats Mickey D's every day? And you're supposed to be a personal trainer? Right, okay. And like I was saying in the video, going back to that video, I said, people, they don't hold themselves accountable. They don't log their food, they don't do X, Y, and Z. And logging your food is paramount, In order to understand what you're getting, you have to understand what you're putting in, right? And you could eat 3,000 calories worth of Taco Bell or 3,000 calories of whole foods, like, nutrient whole foods that are easy for your body to break down. And I guarantee you stick a person on a diet for at least 12 to 16 weeks and you feed them fast food and you correlate that shit versus you stick somebody on an actual whole food diet, where I'm talking lean beef, chicken, steak, fish. After those 16 weeks are up, I will guarantee you the person who is eating a whole foods diet is gonna look better versus the person who doesn't. And like, let's keep everything the same, like the workouts, the cardio, sleep, all that stuff, right? I personally think that the person eating whole foods will look better than, the person eating fast food. And I said in the reel yesterday, it's like skipping meals is more diabolical than eating bad food. And I'm gonna explain why. Because when you skip meals, you actually send your body into starvation mode. So your body starts eating itself more or less, right? Your body starts, eating its muscle because that's where the protein's at. And that's why if you look at guys or look at people who eat once or twice a day, which I don't know how they do that, because I'm like, I don't know how you eat once or twice a day. I mean, I could see like every once in a while because it's like you're just busy and you just fucking tired or whatever it is, But I'm talking about the people who just do that consistently. And then it's like, and you wonder why the scale's not moving. You wonder why your body's not changing. You wonder why your sleep levels out of whack, You're wondering all this shit, man. In reality, it's tied back to your lack of nutrition. Your lack of nutrition, accountability, and the fact that you most likely like you're not eating enough, so you're stressed the fuck out. You're not sleeping enough because your cortisol levels are through the fucking roof because it goes back to your nutrition. You're not top tiered on it. I'm not saying that you have to sit there and you have to log all your meals, or do X, Y, and Z. Because a few cheap meals here, a few cheap meals there, it's not gonna hurt you, Or refeed days, it's not gonna hurt you. I think a lot of people don't understand that, right? It's like, I think it's also something that's competitive bodybuilding is not for everybody. It's not something that, you can just wake up one day and decide to do. I've seen plenty of guys, they get all juiced up for a show, or juiced up for a show. They're like, yeah, I'm doing the show. And it's 20, 25 weeks out. And it's like, and then as the weeks go by, people start tapering off. They start tapering off. I say that because I've seen it happen, And my thing is like, if you can't keep the promise to yourself or what you're gonna do, how can you keep the promise to somebody else? If you don't value you, then how are you gonna value somebody else? How are you gonna value somebody else when it's your word that you're saying that you're gonna do X, Y, and Z? Like, you can't. Everybody talk, and like that's what I said in the reel. Like, everybody talks about what they want to do. Very few go out there and do it. Because the older I get, the more I realized, and I realized this back in my 20s. If you're talking about something, that means you're not doing it. If you're talking about something, that means you're not putting in the hours to get better at it. And everybody wants to say, oh, but I have kids and everything like that too. I'm like, yeah, I understand all that. But imagine if your kid saw you work out an hour a day. Imagine if your kid saw you eating nutritious food. Imagine if your kid saw you, looking healthy, being healthy because of what you're doing, right? I think that's the most important thing because people fail to realize that kids will follow what they see, behavior-wise, attitude-wise, and health-wise. There's this old story that I've heard growing up. It's about twin boys, right? Two twin boys, and a father was an alcoholic, and they grow up, and one of the twin brothers becomes a full-blown alcoholic. And the other twin brother never touches a drop of alcohol ever. And somebody had asked him, "Oh, why are you this way?" And the brother who is an alcoholic says, "I saw my dad drink every day. It was normal." Um, and they asked the other twin brother who's sober, who's been sober, the same question. And he said, "I saw my father drink every day. Why would I want to do that?" So that right there tells you two things. You can either become a product of your environment, or you cannot become a product of your environment and change. A lot of people become products of their environment because it's easier, you know? And a lot of people don't like change because it's difficult, because you have to condition yourself not to think that way or not to react in that way. And I get it, it's hard, you know, but anything learned can be unlearned, right? Like if people who have self-confidence issues, right? I could understand if you're a teenager or young adult, whatever, because we all have self-confidence issues, right? To a point. But after a certain period of time, it's up to you to change that. You know, you can't sit there and be like, "Oh, well, X, Y, and Z, all this other stuff," and I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, you don't get to blame your your current situation on how you think, because if you're past 25, 30, and you're still thinking the same way that you were thinking when you were 15, all you've done is waste time on this earth. Like, you're choosing not to get better. And that's the reality of it, man. It's like a lot of people will choose not to get better because it's easier to play victim than it is to be in a situation and understand, like, yo, okay, it's like, this may not be the best thing for me. Let me change my behavior. Ironically, I didn't fully grow mentally until I moved to a different state. And even though it was a short period of time, it taught me a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, like nothing that was bad, but just mistakes, right? Just young and living life. I remember I bought my first car on my own, you know, so that's that. So, I put myself in situations where I had to improve on my communication skills, my social skills, and just being socially aware, right? And I think that that's important, because a lot of the times people will not understand that, yo, it's your inability to actually create healthy boundaries for yourself that have put you in this situation. It's not something that, like, you can just say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm like this because, you know, my dad was like this or my mom was like this." Like, I get that, and it's fucked up that you were, but what's that got to do with your current situation? You know, what's that got to do with the fact that you're 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus, and you're still thinking the same way? You know? And that's what I was trying to get at that video. Is like, instead of you looking for validation and from other people, understand that the validation comes from yourself. Understand that when you put in the work, it's going to show up. You know? It's like, I'm not going to mention who said it, but this individual told me something when I did my first show. And they said, "Oh, well, you're lucky that you lost all that weight." And I was like, what? Excuse me? And then they said it again like it was true. "Yeah, you're lucky that you lost all that weight." Luck ain't got shit to do with it. Like, I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning, training 6 days a week, doing cardio, you know, following a diet plan, doing all this other stuff. Luck has nothing to do with it at all. if anything, it's called discipline, you know? And a lot of people lack that. Or they're quick to call you out on your accountability, and then when you do the same to them, they can't handle it, right? I used to have a former friend of mine, right? She had gone through a bad breakup, and it was essentially, I don't want to say it was her fault, but how she handled it, it was, you know, like it became her fault, right? So she was seeing this dude for 5 years, engaged to get married. They were living together the whole nine, right? So all that stuff, right? So bro comes home one day, and he's like, "Yo, I want to call off the wedding." And the very first thing that she does, she goes, "Oh well." She doesn't ask why. She doesn't inquire about why. She goes, "Well, let me see your phone." And come to find out, he was cheating on her, and she saw all the text messages, the videos, and pics, all that stuff, right? And so she, in typical woman fashion, got emotional, left the same night, packed up all her shit, left. And months go by, and like, we're talking one day at lunch, and she's like, "Yeah, you know, for the length of time we were together, we never had an argument." Mind you, it's like I said, like months go by, and you know, we was talking about her situation, and I said, that's kind of weird. She's like, "Why? What's up?" I was like, "You never argued once in your 5-year relationship, but here you are spending all this time bad mouthing him, doing X, Y, and Z. It's not hard to see why he didn't want to get married to you." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah. It's not hard to see why he didn't want to get married to you. You just said that you guys never argued in a 5-year relationship, which is a red flag. But yet, here you are saying all this bad shit about him when you had ample time in your relationship to fix it. You didn't want to fix it. And so now you're dealing with the fallout, and you're trying to make yourself the victim in the situation. And in reality, bro just went someplace where he was celebrated, where he got the attention that he wanted because he wasn't getting it from you for whatever reason. Now, I'm not saying cheating is right, because cheating is not right. But it goes back to the accountability part, right? And that's the part I was getting to in that reel. And I said, look, you know, instead of you being one of those people that talk about what you want to do, just go out there and do it. Because it's the same thing with her. Like, she tried to throw herself into a bodybuilding competition prep, and I'm like, and I remember I was prepping for a show too, and I was like, look, you can do a bodybuilding show. I'm cool with that. But please don't use this as an attempt to complain about your ex or do X, Y, and Z, because I don't want to hear it. She was like, "Wait, what?" And yeah, I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear you bad mouthing somebody that I know. I'm not saying that he's not a bad dude. What he did was bad. You know, cheating on you, yes, you know, that's deplorable. You know, I don't care what your excuses are. You know, I'd rather end the relationship with somebody before I even think about cheating on them. You know. And I remember once we was all out, and it was a group of us. We had all gone out to dinner, and so we had all gone out to dinner, and I had met them for dinner, and so we sitting there, we talking, and in the conversation, you know, she brings up her ex, and I literally say, "Look, we don't need to talk about that, because we don't." And then, you know, and then she's like, "Well, but I'm just saying, like, no, like, it's cool, like, you don't need to bring him up, you know, we all know what he did. Everybody at this table knows what he did. You know, nobody's condoning what he did, but stop bringing him up. You know, especially when nobody's asking you about it, right? And I remember the looks at everybody on that table, and they were like, "Mikey, thank you." You know, because it's clear to me that, like I said yesterday, some people are their own storm in their own season. It was ironic that I ran across this reel too. Um, it was about cows and buffaloes. The difference between cows and buffaloes is that they or oh, let me back it up. Cows and buffaloes can both sense when a storm is coming. The difference between a cow and a buffalo is that cows will run away from the storm before the storm hits. Buffaloes will run to the storm and get through it faster. And cows don't stop, you know, when they sense the storm's coming. They keep running. They keep running. And it's the same thing in life, man. It's like a lot of people will run with the storm because it's comfortable for them to play victim. But if you face it head on and then you deal with it, imagine how much faster you'll get through it. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should go out there and find a storm and run through it. You know, what I'm saying is that you have the ability to face your problems head on, learn from them, get better, apply the knowledge and the lessons that you have from that situation, and hopefully you won't make the same mistake again. You know, hopefully you won't make the same mistake, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And a last thing I'm gonna hit on is marriage. Cause like everybody on here, shit, I want to get married. I don't having kids at 36, 37. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of set in my ways at that, right? But I think it's important that you have conversations with everybody who knows your significant other. I'm talking friends. I'm talking family members. All of them. Past exes, whether they were married before or not. You know, inquire about why, you know, why they got divorced or whatever it was. And if you have access to the divorce, you know, papers, you know, or the case notes, go look that up too. You know, find out how they handle themselves financially. You know, find out if they have any outstanding debt and how much debt do they have. You know, because a lot of the times, man, is like people will not tell you this shit, and then you get married to them, and then you come and find out they have $50, $60, $70, $80,000 in debt, and you ain't got no debt. So that's a whole different conundrum that you gotta take up with, right? Find out how they regulate their emotions. You know, find out if their coping mechanisms are actually working or if they need to improve on that. You know, and if they want help with that, go help them. You know, you don't want to help people who don't want, you know, who say, "Oh, I don't need any help," but yet they do. You know, just lead them to their own demise because there's no point. Also, the last thing too, man, is that you have to realize that when a situation is not for you, that you have to walk away from it. And it's difficult as it is because nobody wants to, you know, admit that something's not working, or they don't want to admit that something, you know, didn't work out in their favor. And it sucks. It's a horrible, horrible thing because we all have this grand idea in our head, like, oh, our relationship is going to be fucking peachy. It's going to be like, you know, we're never going to have this. Like, no. It's like people argue, people fight all the time, but it's how you come back. And sometimes, whether it's, you know, you guys taking a break. I'm not saying go out there and fuck other people. I ain't saying do all that shit. You know, I'm saying it's like work on yourself, you know. Read books, you know, go out with your partners, you know, or go out with your friends from work, whatever it is. Integrate yourself that way and then like become more social. Because I've seen a lot of people who just end up when they get into a relationship, they're like, oh, well, it's all about my girlfriend or boyfriend. Like, no, it's not. It's like, yo, like, you're a part of this chapter. You're a part of everything that I have going on, but you're not the main character in my story. You're one of the main characters, but you're not the main character. I'm the main character, right? And I think a lot of people will just not understand how to approach situations like this. And, okay, I lied. I got one last thing. Somebody once told me that they were healed, right? And I kind of look back on that situation, and I said, nah, you're not healed. And they're like, what you mean? Because if you were healed, you wouldn't have to say that. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, if you were healed, you would not have to say that you're healed. Healed people don't go around saying that they're healed. It's like, one of my favorite comparison quotes is like the lion in the jungle, right? The lion is the king of the jungle. The lion does not go around telling other motherfuckers that he is the lion. He just goes off and does what he does. You know, he controls everything, right? And it's like that with people who say that they're healed, but it's like, no, in reality, if you were healed, you wouldn't have to say that you're healed. You know? Now, there's a difference between telling people, like, yeah, like, when you're healed and everything, too, on all that stuff, because it's like, what you're saying is that I'm emotionally available, I'm regulated, whatever it is. You're not telling the other person, oh, I'm healed, but yet everything else that you do is contradictory to what you just said. You know, because I've told people, like, look, you're not going to get me out my, like, just because I'm calm, cool, and collected doesn't mean that I don't have the old version in me, because I do, you know. It's like that old version in me, like, that nigga's a fucking firecracker, because I was. But at the same time, you have to realize who you're dealing with. At the same time, you have to realize, okay, instead of me getting off my square, instead of me getting out of my pocket, let me just stop and think. Let me take the 10, 15, 20 seconds, whatever it is, and mull it over in my head and realize, yo, is this a conversation worth having? Now, most of the time it's not, because when you stop and you think, and you debate whether you should go back and forth with this individual or individuals, it's not worth it. Never is. All right, y'all, this is 33 minutes of your life that you won't get back. Hope y'all keeping it 4-piece. Private player, positive pushing. I'll see y'all next week, Sunday. Love y'all. And like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. Peace. All right, y'all, have a beautiful Sunday. I'm out.